With the Easter holidays upon us, there's bound to be a ton of chocolate in your household. Well, you can grab some of that chocolate and make it into an Easter egg yourself. Let me show you how to do this. The first thing to do is to melt your chocolate, which is actually going to be the most complicated part of this whole process. What you choose will determine the temperature at which you should melt the chocolate. I've gone for dark chocolate, which is a 52%, which is neither too sweet or too bitter. For 2 medium-sized eggs, I recommend using at least 200 grams. Now what you need to do is, however much you decide to melt, is to keep a third of the chocolate quantity aside. It will make more sense as to why shortly. Now proceed to chop your chocolate in very fine chunks. This will help the chocolate to melt easily. And do the same with the third of chocolate that you have kept separately. A quick note is that the third that you're keeping aside doesn't need it to be exactly precise to the gram, just roughly a third of the chocolate. Now you take the 2/3 or the larger quantity and put that in a bowl. You're now going to melt this in very short bursts in the microwave, no longer than 20 seconds at a time. The reason for that is because the chocolate can burn very easily when you melt it in the microwave. Now the chocolate, as you can see, hasn't really melted at first, but when you really look and start to mix the bowl, you can see that it has melted a little bit. Do give it a mix because you want to spread that heat and to prevent the chocolate from burning. Then put that back in the microwave for another short burst. Then repeat the previous step and really mix thoroughly to spread the heat. As you are mixing, you can see that the chocolate is starting to melt, and this is exactly what we want. Then put that back in the microwave once more at 20 seconds, and you can see the chocolate would have melted quite a bit. It is still a bit lumpy, but that's okay. At this point, the chocolate should have reached about 45 degrees, which is what you want if you're using dark chocolate. For milk and white chocolate, you want to get it to 40 degrees. Now add the chocolate that you kept aside to bring down the temperature of the melted chocolate to about 35 degrees for dark chocolate, 31 to 30 degrees for milk and white chocolate. As you start mixing, it will at first seem lumpy, but it will loosen up very quickly. If you still feel that it is a little bit lumpy, you can put it in the microwave for no longer than 5 seconds, which is just enough to melt all those lumps away, but still to keep the chocolate between 33 to 35 degrees, which is exactly what you want. Now it has melted really well, and using a thermometer at this point, you should read a temperature of about 35 degrees. If using milk and white chocolate, it should be about 31 degrees. This entire process is called tempering your chocolate, which is exactly what you need to do if you want a solid chocolate form that is also glossy. Now pour your chocolate in an egg mold like this one, link in the description below for the mold. Fill each cavity is about halfway, then grab your mold and swirl it around to make sure that the chocolate covers the entirety of the cavity. Use a spatula if you need to spread the chocolate around the mold, but make sure you do that before the chocolate hardens. Then place some film above your worktop and you're going to flip your mold over a rack upside down. But it is a good idea to grab a spatula and to clean the edges of the mold. This will make it easier to get your eggs out once they have become hard. Now leave to cool for 20 minutes to half an hour and your eggs should be ready. Now another way you can do this is by melting white chocolate and dark chocolate or any combination of your preference and brushing the melted chocolate into your mold. This will give it a marbled sort of effect and makes it a lot cleaner and easier to pour your chocolate into the mold. You have a lot more control of the spread of the chocolate and you can really target the edges of the mold. Then place your mold in the fridge for about 15 minutes to harden the first layer. Then repeat that same step again by adding more layers of white and dark chocolate. There isn't a particular pattern you have to follow, just be as random and creative as you want to be. But just make sure that with each layer you really fill the cavities of the mold. It is a good idea to add a thicker layer on the edges of the cavities, as this will be the most brittle part of your egg. Add any melted chocolate you have left over into the cavities of the mold to get a thicker layer. Make sure you swirl it around to get as even a coat as possible. Then, as previously, clean the edges and flip over a rack. Now let your chocolate cool and harden for about 30 minutes. If you are using a silicone mold like this one, just put your finger right in the center of the mold at the bottom and push up, and this will really easily pop out each eggshell. The edges of the shells may be somewhat unfinished, but that's okay, you can clean them up a bit later. If you take a look at these eggshells, you can see that they have a nice glossy finish, and this is because we tempered the chocolate. As you can see, the results are worth it. Now grab a knife and run it alongside the edges of your eggshells to clean up those rough edges. Now put a heat-proof mat onto your worktop in a frying pan heated at low to medium heat. Then place each eggshells for a few seconds into the pan to melt the edges of the shell. Do the same thing with another half, and you are now going to have melted edges around the shells, which will make it easy for you to line up the shells and stick them together to form a whole egg. If you want your egg to be standing, you can place it in the pan for a few seconds to melt the bottom, then place your egg to dry on some parchment paper. You now have a beautifully marbled eggshell for Easter. As you can tell, they are again very glossy, have formed together quite well, and you can use different mold sizes. Just be as creative as you want to be. This makes a really fun activity to do over the Easter holidays with your loved ones. If you like this video, please subscribe. I have a lot more coming your way. Now this was my recipe for make your own chocolate Easter eggs.